In response to the dwindling personal computer demand, PC maker Hewlett-Packard, also called HP, said that it would lay off as many as 6,000 employees over the next 3 years. The company will reduce its real estate footprint and slash up to 10% of its 61,000 global employees over the next 3 years to control costs. HP has witnessed a persistent decline in the market for personal computers, which accounts for the majority of its revenue. According to HP's statement here, the plan should save as much as $1.4 billion annually by the end of fiscal year 2025. The HP CEO Enrique Lores in a statement said that it is a future-ready transformation plan. It will be able to help them better serve their customers and drive long-term value creation by reducing costs and reinvesting in key growth initiatives that will position the business for the future. In recent weeks, a number of IT businesses have revealed their intentions to reduce their workforce. Meta platform, Amazon, they have already started laying off about 10,000 workers. Twitter has also eliminated more than half of its 7,500-person workforce. So we've seen a series of mass layoffs by tech giants, and in response to the dwindling personal computer demand, PC maker Hewlett-Packard, is also known as HP, has said that it would lay off as many as 6,000 employees over the next 3 years. The company is planning to reduce its real estate footprint as well and will slash up to 10% of its 61,000 global employees over the next 3 years to control costs. For more on this, we're now being joined by Simon Lacey, former Vice President, Huawei from Adelaide. Thank you so much for joining us on this broadcast.
Good to be back with WION. Thanks for having me.
Right. Now, my first question to you. HP plans to lay off about 6,000 people in the next 3 years. We've seen a series of mass layoffs, as I mentioned. Do you reckon things will get worse before we see this trend plateau?
Yeah, I think we're going to see things get worse. I mean, the recent announcement by Hewlett-Packard of 6,000 cuts is just sort of further confirmation of what we've been seeing in the industry generally. We've had 35,000 tech workers across 72 companies laid off in November alone, and that adds to a total of 120,000 tech workers lost this year. I think in most kinds of cyclical downturns, we've still got some way to go until we hit the bottom. I mean, the underlying causes of these layoffs have yet to play out in full, or the underlying causes of the problems that the tech companies are going through have yet to play out. So, we've got things like, economic headwinds. We've got stubborn inflation, energy shocks, higher interest rates, reduced investment budgets, faster startup funding. And so on earning calls over the last few weeks, particularly the end of October, you saw a lot of technology company leaders being on the defensive over sort of poor share price performance. And they were talking about layoffs or at least slowing down in the pace of hiring. I don't think we've reached the bottom yet.
Right. Okay. So do you think this is an effective strategy in times of challenging markets and instability? There is data that suggests that holding on to talent may prove to be better in the long run.
Well, I mean, for almost all the companies that have announced layoffs, this is really about reducing operating costs to boost sort of share price performance. I mean, most CEO pay in these publicly listed companies is indexed against share price performance. I mean, if you take the case of Hewlett-Packard, for example, the company stated publicly that this decision was about sort of long-term value creation, and it wanted to achieve that through reducing its costs and then reinvesting in sort of key growth initiatives to reposition its business for the future. Also, in the case of HP, the layoff plan was announced in conjunction with 11.2% fall in revenues for the fiscal quarter of 2022. I think on your second point, I mean, about, whether it's better to retain or shed labor, I think that the labor market for tech workers is both sort of fairly dynamic with a decent amount of churn, but it's also fairly tight because these sort of skills don't just grow on trees. I mean, they're fairly in high demand. But it's my guess that, management of these companies has sort of weighed the costs and benefits of keeping or letting staff go versus the pressure they're feeling from investors. And as usual in this sort of modern day and age, the imperatives and prerogatives of capital have triumphed over those of labor.
Absolutely. Now, with demand of personal computers slowing, to what extent exactly? I mean, I'm coming back to the same point. Do you think this move will be able to help HP cut and restructure costs here?
Yeah, as I said, I mean, operating costs, and they were talking about their intention to reinvest in to better position the company for the future. And really, it's anybody's guess what that might mean. I mean, PCs are just sort of one arm of HP's business, and that has spanned sort of computer hardware, computer software, IT services, and IT consulting. But you have to remember that HP operates in a market of sort of crushing competition across all of these segments. And it's going to need more than just sort of cutting operating costs to succeed over the medium to long term across all of these business lines.
Absolutely, you raise a very important point there. And as I mentioned, of course, this comes amid a series of mass layoffs. There is a larger trend here. How do you assess that?
Well, I think more than anything, this is likely to be a short-term correction to boost share prices going into the end of the year. And I think the market also seems to think that the technology sector is sort of by definition future-proof. What I think is interesting here is that this may sort of further entrench an existing trend of sort of growing multipolarity in the tech world, with Silicon Valley having to compete with companies from other geographies, both for market share but also tech talent. So, for example, there were reports that TikTok was snapping up those who'd been fired or who had resigned from Twitter and other tech companies. And there are also reports that many of those who have lost their tech jobs in this latest wave will be emboldened to start their own companies. And of course, the biggest winners are the smaller tech companies that previously struggled to compete with the behemoths to attract engineering and coding talent. And this could bode very positively for a sort of new wave of innovation in the US tech sector.
Right, absolutely. Mr. Simon, thank you so much for joining us on this broadcast with all your insights on this.
Thank you.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.